The crunch of gravel under the wheels echoed along the ancient stone road leading into the Laurent estate, a secluded manor nestled deep amidst lavender fields and ancient oak trees of Provence. The golden afternoon sunlight bathed the moss-covered roof tiles, the dark wooden shutters, and the green patinaed iron gate adorned with Baroque patterns from the previous century. Etienne Laurent sat in silence in the back seat of the Bentley, his chin resting on his hand, eyes fixed on the low hill ahead, a place where, as a child, he once sat gazing at the clear blue sky, dreaming of distant worlds. It had been 12 years since he last set foot here. 12 years away from the family, away from the shadow of a powerful lineage, building his own tech empire in the heart of Paris. And now he had returned not just as the sole heir but also as a husband. The car slowed down. Sitting beside him, Vivienne Marchand, his wife, couldn't hide a slight furrow of her brow as the full view of the manor came into sight. She had heard much about this place, a symbol of old power of the art de vivre, but in her heart, this heritage seemed lacking in comfort. She exhaled softly, speaking in an even tone, as if evaluating a piece of fashion. "I thought I'd imagined it differently." Etienne turned to her, a faint smile on his lips. "Differently how?" Vivienne glanced at the moss-covered stone walls, the unpainted wooden doors, and the verdigris bronze statue in the garden. "Less antiquated." He didn't answer. Instead, as the car came to a stop at the wide stone steps leading to the front door, he pushed the door open and stepped out. The air was laced with the scent of lavender and wood smoke. The household staff stood in a neat line, heads bowed silently in welcome. Etienne squinted as he scanned the line. Then his gaze stopped, at the very end, standing apart yet unmistakable, Madame Magda Rousseau. Still slender but upright, her silver hair was neatly pinned at the nape of her neck. Her stern face softened by a trace of affection Etienne hadn't seen in over a decade. A part of him softened, like the boy he once was. He strode toward her without hesitation and embraced her tightly. "Magda!" She still smelled of lavender and orange peel soap. She returned the embrace with a light squeeze, then pulled back, her eyes momentarily misted before she composed herself again. "The young master has finally come home." "I'm home," Etienne said quietly, sincerely. Vivienne stood behind him, observing the scene with an unreadable expression. She wasn't used to her husband, so serious and composed, showing such emotion toward a servant. She stepped forward, eyeing the old woman with careful scrutiny. Etienne turned, took his wife's hand, and smiled. "Vivienne, this is Magda, the woman who raised me." Vivienne extended her hand, the slim fingers adorned with a glittering diamond ring. "Pleasure to meet you." Magda took it in a light, firm, and brief handshake. "Hello. Welcome home." Vivienne gave a small nod, her eyes quickly scanning the plain black uniform and the dark eyes of the older woman. For a fleeting moment, Magda met her gaze, one that wasn't exactly cold, but far from warm, like two cats locking eyes on their first night. No hissing, no claws, but the outcome of an unseen battle already decided. Etienne sensed something was off in the air, but he brushed it aside. Probably just a cultural difference between two very different women, he thought. None of the three knew that in that moment, a silent war had already begun. Golden light from the crystal chandeliers cascaded down onto the long dining table, draped in pristine white linen, glinting off polished Limoges porcelain and silverware, so finely shined they sparkled like the eyes of the ambitious. The first dinner at the Laurent estate unfolded like a ritual. Etienne sat at the center seat. Across from him, Vivienne wore a flowing ivory silk dress, a delicate Cartier bracelet adorning her wrist. She radiated the kind of elegance celebrated by fashion magazines, but her eyes betrayed a sense of alienation. Not from a lack of luxury, but from too many things slipping beyond her control. Magda, the woman Vivienne still couldn't quite place in the category of servant, sat at Etienne's side, in the spot once occupied by his mother. The meal proceeded with polite decorum, featuring classic French dishes served by staff in formal black suits. Etienne did his best to keep the atmosphere relaxed, making light conversation about the vineyard, the family's wine production, and seasons of poor harvests. Vivian smiled, but her responses were subtly out of sync. When dessert arrived, a tart tatin with hints of smoky caramel, Vivian gently laid down her fork and knife, turned to Magda, and spoke in a tone as smooth as an afternoon tea conversation. "I heard you once managed this entire household?" Magda nodded. "Yes, since 1976. Vivian smiled, took a sip of wine. "So, nearly 50 years. That's quite a long time. I sometimes wonder, for someone who's been part of a place for so long, change must be hard to accept, isn't it?" The air in the room seemed to drop by a degree. A few nearby staff exchanged glances. Magda remained composed. "I believe change is good, but not all change is necessary." Vivian tilted her head slightly. "Fair point. I just think, if we want to move into a new era, sometimes we have to let go of the old. Habits, for instance." Etienne set his glass down, leaning slightly forward. "Vivian, this is one habit I hope never changes." She looked at him briefly, then turned back to Magda, nodding. "I understand. It's just, I'm not used to it yet." Magda smiled softly, as if she had heard those words from countless others before Vivian. Familiarity doesn't come from force. It comes with time, if one truly intends to stay. Etienne cleared his throat and shifted the subject. But no one at the table missed the flicker in Vivian's eyes. Not anger, nor embarrassment, but calculation. When dinner ended and the guests had gone, Etienne stood alone in the library. His eyes roamed quietly over the leather-bound books and childhood mementos. This wasn't just a house. It was history, memory, flesh and blood. Vivian entered behind him, carrying a faint trace of perfume. "I'm only trying to help you," she said, not waiting for him to turn. "By making Magda feel her place is being questioned, on the very first evening?" Vivian shrugged. "She's a servant. No matter how close she is, she's still part of the operating system." "I didn't say anything untrue." Etienne turned. His eyes were calm, but there was a swell beneath the surface. "Magda is not just a part of the system. She is the heart of this house." Vivian smiled lightly. "Even a heart needs replacing. Sometimes, darling." Etienne said nothing, but something inside him shifted, like a fine crack forming on a wall he once thought unbreakable. The next morning, as sunlight poured through the tall windows, Vivian descended to the breakfast room in a cream-colored silk robe. She walked the hallway and spotted Magda instructing staff as they prepared the morning tea. She stopped, flashing a flawless smile. "Oh, is there anything I can help with?" Magda turned, slightly surprised. Vivian picked up the tea tray, stepped forward, and then, seemingly by accident, let it slip. The silver teapot tilted, spilling hot tea directly onto Magda's sleeve. "Oh no, how clumsy of me. Are you all right?" Magda said nothing. She simply nodded, dabbing at the spill with a cloth. Vivian reached out to help and added softly, "I suppose I still need to get used to everything here." Magda looked up, her gaze sharpening for a split second. "I'm sure you will, but not everyone is here to be experimented on." Vivian smiled, a real one this time. Not warm, not mocking. Just clear. "I've already begun." Mornings at the Laurent estate always began with a gentle symphony. The rustle of wind through the oaks, the soft bubbling of the kettle in the kitchen, and the measured steps of polished shoes on old terracotta tiles. But this morning, Etienne sensed a small discord in the melody, barely noticeable, like a string slightly out of tune. He sat in the library, trying to focus on an investment report from Paris, but his gaze kept drifting toward the window. The image of Vivian from the previous night, composed, icy, her velvet voice laced with quiet exclusion, kept replaying in his mind. There was a knock at the door. He didn't need to look to know who it was. "Come in." Magda stepped in, carrying a tea tray, just like when he was a boy. But this time, she didn't sit in the chair beside him as she used to. She stood upright, like a veteran soldier awaiting orders. "I don't mean to disturb you. Just bringing your morning tea." Etienne stood up immediately, walking over to take the tray from her. "You never disturb me." Magda nodded faintly, though her eyes betrayed a deeper weariness. Not physical, but the quiet exhaustion of someone who has seen more than they ever wanted to. "I only have one question, Etienne." He looked at her, waiting. "Is this house still my home?" His heart skipped a beat. He tightened his grip on the tray. "Of course it is. What do you mean by that?" Magda didn't answer right away. She looked straight into his eyes, the same eyes that had taught him strength through his childhood, now shadowed with doubt. When a guest enters a home, they may not understand everything that came before, but if they begin to move every stone, replace every object, and the host says nothing, then who truly lives there? Etienne swallowed hard. He knew who she was talking about, and worse, he knew she was right. Vivian doesn't mean any harm. She's just adjusting. You know she's strong. Magda gave a sad smile. Strength is never the same as cruelty. Then she bowed her head slightly. "I'll return to my room. It seems the time has come for me to learn silence." That afternoon, Vivian walked into the staff dining room, something no lady of the house had ever done. Everyone paused mid-meal when they saw her. She smiled graciously. "Don't be alarmed. I just wanted to see how things are done around here." She strolled down the length of the table, her eyes scanning each person like she was appraising a runway. When she reached the end of the table, where Magda was seated, she tilted her head slightly. "It's unusual to see a head housekeeper dining with junior staff." Magda didn't respond. She simply looked at Vivian, as though weighing what was really being said. Vivian continued, her tone as light as a spring breeze. "In many households, senior staff have their own dining room. Perhaps it's time we implemented that standard here." Magda laid down her spoon, her voice calm and steady. Not raised, not lowered. "Here we eat together, like a family. You can change the furniture, the curtains, even the chef. But values don't move so easily." Vivian's smile widened. "Values should be reassessed over time, Madame Magda." That evening, Etienne dined alone. Vivian said she wasn't feeling well. Magda, too, was absent. Silence filled the room. He glanced at the empty chair to his left, Magda's place, and felt as if the house had lost one of its pillars. No one said anything, but everyone was quietly retreating. The atmosphere in the estate was growing heavier, not from the mustiness of age, but from the weight of prolonged silence, the kind that kills a home faster than fire ever could. A light rain fell that afternoon. Raindrops trailed down the living room windows, forming soft, ink-like curves across the glass. Inside the Laurent estate, everything still operated in quiet order, as if nothing had happened. But anyone sensitive enough would sense that the tension had shifted, from silent to stalking. Vivian sat in the drawing room, a space Etienne had gifted her as a wedding present, filled with natural light and pale oak floors. In front of her lay a sketch for her upcoming collection. But her hand didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the ticking of the antique clock. Then, exactly at tea time, she rose, not calling for staff, not requesting the tray of pastries, but walked purposefully down the corridor toward the main tea room, where Magda traditionally prepared tea for Etienne at this hour. The tea room was empty. Magda was setting teacups onto a silver tray, as she had done thousands of times before. Vivian entered, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Magda didn't look up. "I'll take the tea tray to Etienne," Vivian said. Magda paused for a split second. "Ma'am, I've done that every day. The master is used to." Vivian cut her off, her voice soft but firm. "And now, I want to be the only one who serves my husband." She didn't wait for a response. She stepped forward and lifted the tray with both hands. But something felt off. As she walked, her steps unsteady, the tray tilted slightly, and the next moment, a sharp crash rang out. A teacup shattered on the floor, scattering porcelain shards. The hot tea splashed outward, right onto Magda, who had rushed forward instinctively to help. A collective gasp filled the room as the steaming liquid soaked into her sleeve. Vivian let go of the tray, stepped back half a pace, one hand on her chest in feigned surprise. "Oh my! I didn't realize it was so heavy." Magda bent down without a word. She picked up the shattered pieces with her bare hands, murmuring softly, "It's all right." The door burst open. Etienne stepped in, just in time to see Magda kneeling on the floor, her sleeve wet, shards of porcelain at Vivian's feet. "What happened?" Vivian turned, swift as an actress hitting her mark. "I wanted to bring you tea. I wasn't used to the wait." Magda didn't get out of the way in time. Etienne looked around. His eyes landed on Magda's hand. Red, a few faint burn marks beginning to rise. "You're burned." He rushed to her, kneeling beside her, taking her hand gently. "Are you all right? Let me call a doctor." Magda shook her head, her voice still calm. "Just a little heat. It's nothing." Vivian stood above them, saying nothing. But Etienne felt the chill in his wife's eyes. Not because she didn't apologize, but because she didn't think she needed to. That evening, Etienne entered the bedroom, uneasy. Vivian sat at her vanity, brushing her hair. He stood behind her, not meeting her gaze in the mirror. "Why did you insist on bringing the tea?" She paused, then set the brush down gently. "I wanted to help you." "By hurting someone else?" She turned in her chair, facing him directly. "I slipped, Etienne. I told you." Etienne looked at her for a long time. The eyes that once enchanted him now felt foreign. He wasn't sure what she was thinking, or worse, he was sure and didn't want to believe it. "Magda got burned, Vivian. You don't think that's wrong?" "Of course I do," she said with a cold smile, stepping closer. "What's wrong is that I let her run this place for far too long." Etienne said nothing. She placed her hand on his chest. "This house needs change, and I will be the one to start it." He brushed her hand away, gently but firmly. "Not by hurting others." Vivian paused, then took a step back, laughing softly in disbelief. "Are you choosing sides?" Etienne didn't answer, but for the first time his silence was not weakness. It was restraint, fueled by a rising anger he wasn't ready to unleash. The grand clock in the main hall struck 8. Its chimes echoed through the stone corridors, reverberating in the dining room like an unspoken warning. Tonight's dinner had 2 additional guests. Monsieur Henri Delacroix, a major shareholder in Etienne's company, and his wife Madame Camille, a woman with sharp eyes and a memory just as keen. Vivian entered in a deep red silk dress. The color of old wine poured from a crystal decanter. Every step she took was fluid, graceful. Every glance, every slight lift of her lips, calculated, like the entire room was her runway. Etienne arrived last, his eyes instinctively searching for Magda, who was quietly inspecting each glass, each polished silver fork. Her expression was composed, but her gaze seemed distant. Everything began smoothly. Polite talk about stocks and markets, casual compliments on the perfectly seasoned foie gras. Wine was poured evenly by the staff, its aroma rich with blackcurrants and aged oak. Vivian raised her glass, her eyes sweeping across the table like a hostess guiding the evening. "I've always believed true elegance lies in the details. The right linen on the table, the lighting at just the right warmth, and staff who understand their place." Etienne shot her a glance, his spine tightening slightly. Henri gave a dry chuckle, unsure if it was out of politeness or discomfort. Magda stood nearby, silent as a shadow, but her eyes met Vivian's briefly and sharp as a blade. Vivian turned to her, her voice so sweet it felt artificial. "Magda, would you please pour me some more wine?" Magda stepped forward, lifting the bottle of red. Her hand still bore slight swelling from the burn 2 days prior. Vivian remained silent until the glass was full. Then, seemingly by accident, she flicked her hand, brushing the base of the glass. A sharp crash shattered the air. The glass tipped, spilling deep red wine directly onto Magda. The stain spread across her white apron, soaking into the clean blouse she wore every evening. Magda stood still. No sound. No sudden reaction. Vivian blinked, placing her hand over her lips in mock surprise. "Oh dear, How clumsy of me. Are you all right? No one believed the tone. Not even the guests. Camille glanced at her husband, whispering something Etienne couldn't hear. Etienne stood abruptly. That's enough. His voice rang out, cutting through the room. Everyone turned toward him. Vivian raised an eyebrow. It was just an accident, darling. Accidents don't happen twice to the same person, Vivian. For the first time, Vivian took half a step back. Her smile remained, but her eyes darkened. Magda remained still. She didn't look at Vivian, nor at Etienne. She simply removed her apron, folding it carefully, ceremoniously, as if performing a ritual she knew too well. Etienne turned to her. You don't need to continue tonight. I'm sorry. Magda looked up. Her slight nod wasn't an acceptance of the apology. It was acceptance of the truth. She walked out of the room, her pace neither fast nor slow. But she left behind a chill that gripped everyone present. Vivian turned back to the table, smiling at the guests. My sincere apologies, everyone. I suppose we got a little emotional. No one replied. Both Henri and Camille simply gave curt nods, their eyes wary. Etienne didn't return to his seat. He left the dining room in silence. That night, he stood alone in the library. Outside, it was raining again. He no longer questioned whether Vivian had done it on purpose. He knew. They all knew. And worse, he had known all along. And stayed silent. The door creaked open. James, his cousin, stepped in, leaning against the doorway. You let it happen. Etienne didn't argue. James walked closer. Magda won't complain. But you know better than anyone. She's endured enough. Etienne said quietly. I won't let her walk away like this. James nodded. Let's hope you're not too late. The next morning, the Laurent estate was wrapped in an unusual stillness. Not the peaceful kind that follows a sunny day, but the silence of a house after a storm. Everything motionless, hushed, as if waiting for something either to collapse or be saved. Etienne woke early. He didn't call for breakfast, didn't change into his work clothes, didn't check his phone. He stood before the window in his bedroom, looking out toward the back garden, the place where, as a child, he used to sit under the chestnut tree, reading with a mug of hot chocolate made by Magda, wrapped in a wool blanket she had knitted herself. But now, beneath that tree, there was only emptiness. Magda had not been seen since the night before. Her room was empty, the closet left open. Some personal belongings had already been packed away. She was preparing to leave. Etienne knew it, and he couldn't let it happen. He knocked on her door. No answer. But it wasn't locked. Inside, she sat in a wooden chair by the window looking out. A small suitcase sat by her feet. She wore a gray sweater Etienne had given her for Christmas 6 years ago. Magda wasn't surprised. It was as though she had been waiting for him. Etienne stood quietly for a moment. Then he walked in and sat in the chair opposite her. You're really leaving? She nodded just slightly. I think it's time. Because of Vivian? Magda looked up at him. Her eyes held no reproach. Only one thing, sorrow. But a deep, knowing sorrow, the kind a mother has when she knows her child has chosen the wrong partner. Not because of her. Because of you. Etienne froze. Me? Magda nodded. You knew what was happening. You knew it early on. But you chose silence. He looked down at the floor. No excuses. No defense. I was afraid, he whispered. Afraid of losing everything. Afraid that if I spoke up, the marriage would fall apart. And I'd be back here, alone in this old house, with all the memories I spent so long trying to escape. Magda watched him for a long time. But if you stay silent, you'll lose the things that matter most, things you can't get back. Etienne looked up. His eyes were red, his voice rough. You are my family. Magda smiled, the first smile in days. Then act like someone who knows how to keep family. She took his hand gently, slowly. You already know what you need to do, Etienne. That afternoon, Etienne stepped into the bedroom. Vivian was choosing jewelry. She turned and immediately recognized something had changed. Etienne was no longer the quiet husband she could control. We need to talk, Etienne said, his voice flat. Vivian narrowed her eyes. About last night? He nodded. I can't accept how you've treated Magda, the staff, this house. Vivian crossed her arms, her smile tinged with mockery. Are you going to throw me out? Etienne didn't answer right away, but his eyes did. Vivian stepped closer, like an actress stepping out of character. You think you'll find someone who understands you like I do? Who fits your position the way I do? I don't need someone who fits my position, Etienne said, switching, for the first time, to formal speech. I need someone who understands the value of people. Vivian let out a soft laugh and took a step back. Very well. But don't forget this, Etienne. Walking away from me won't be that easy. And when you lose everything, remember it was you who chose to lose me. Etienne looked at her one last time. No, Vivian. I'm choosing to hold on to the last decent part of myself. That evening, Vivian left the Laurent estate. No tears, no drama, just the sound of a car door closing, and the red taillights disappearing down the leaf-lined road. Etienne stood on the steps, watching. Beside him was James. Is it done? James asked. Etienne nodded. It's done. And now, it's time to begin again. The early morning sky over Provence was strangely blue. White clouds drifted gently above the fragrant lavender fields. The sun was not yet harsh, but bright enough to stream through the glass windows, casting long beams of light across the polished stone floor of the Laurent estate. Etienne stood alone in the dining room, staring at Magda's empty seat. She had not returned. Her suitcase was still in her room, but the door was locked, and she had not appeared since the afternoon before. He sat in her chair for the first time and felt like an intruder. That space did not belong to him. It belonged to a woman who had spent her entire life holding this house together, even when the people inside it had fallen apart. That afternoon, Etienne walked to the back wing of the estate, where the staff lived. No ceremony, no notice, just himself. No butler, no Swiss watch on his wrist. He knocked gently on the dark wooden door of Magda's room. No reply. Then the door opened from the inside. Magda stood there. She wasn't surprised. She knew he would come, but she waited for him to speak. Etienne took a deep breath. You haven't left. Thank you. Magda replied. I haven't felt the need to rush, but I'm still considering it. Etienne nodded, his eyes steady. No begging, no desperation. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to listen. Just once. Not as a master, but as the boy who used to sit next to you by the fireplace, clutching a pillow and crying over a lost cat. Magda gave a quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it hit a memory she had buried deep. I was wrong. I stayed silent too long. I let someone hurt the person who mattered most to me, just because I was afraid of ruining an image. But what's an image worth if the inside is already hollow? She looked at him. Her gaze slowly softened. Etienne stepped closer. This estate means nothing without you. Not because of the work you do, but because you're its soul. If you leave, it'll just be an empty house. A long silence. Then Magda poured 2 cups of tea, the orange blossom black tea Etienne had loved since childhood. She placed a cup in front of him before speaking. You really have grown up. Etienne smiled faintly. Something slipped from the edge of his eye. Not a tear, but a quiet relief after days of unspoken strain. Magda took a sip. Then she said, I'll stay. Etienne looked up. But not like before. I won't stay in the wings anymore. If I stay, I will speak up. I will act. I'll help you keep this place as it was meant to be. And I won't be silent again. Etienne nodded. That's exactly what I hoped you'd do. Magda smiled, the smile of someone who knew they had not raised the wrong child. That evening, for the first time in days, the tea tray appeared in Etienne's room, brought in by Magda herself. He took it slowly. No words were needed between them. As she turned to leave, Etienne called after her. Madame Magda. Yes. Can we start again? Magda nodded slowly. We're not starting again, Etienne. We're continuing. This time, without letting go of each other. 13 days after Vivian left, a letter arrived at the Laurent estate. Not an email, not a message, but an ivory parchment envelope, sealed with wax, the handwriting so familiar that Etienne recognized it with just a glance. From Vivian. He didn't open it immediately, nor did he put it away. He set it on the desk in the library, where the morning sunlight slanted in, outlining the edges of the letter in soft gold. That evening, Magda entered, saw the letter. She said nothing, simply looked at Etienne for a moment, then left, leaving him alone with his past. The next morning, Etienne stood alone in the garden. Vivian arrived. No notice, no escort, no luggage, just a long trench coat, dark sunglasses, and a rare quietness about her. He wasn't surprised. She had always chosen her moments. They stood 3 meters apart, in the blooming garden where, long ago, he had first brought her as his lover, not yet his wife. "You didn't respond to my letter," she said. "I didn't need to," Etienne replied. Vivian nodded, as if she had expected that. "I didn't come to apologize. I just didn't want it to end in cold silence." Etienne looked at her, not with anger, not with bitterness. Just the final look of someone who had once loved. "It already ended. We don't need to reenact it." Vivian removed her sunglasses. For the first time in years, he saw her eyes not blazing with fire, but filled with exhaustion. "You were right," she said quietly. "Magda meant more than I ever understood. That house was never mine. Maybe I never even wanted it. I just wanted to control it." A silence passed between them. Etienne exhaled slowly. "You hurt the person I respected most, and you know that. But that's not what made me end the marriage. Not the wine stain on Magda's apron." Vivian looked at him. "Then what?" "The way you smiled afterward, as if nothing mattered but you." Vivian didn't respond. Perhaps she had played that line in her head every night for the past 13 nights. "So, can we end this with something decent?" Etienne nodded. "We did love each other, even if briefly, and I once believed you were part of my future. I don't hate you, Vivian, but I no longer hold on to you." Vivian reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a ring, their wedding ring. She placed it in his hand and said, "Then keep this as a reminder that someone can love wrong, but still learn to love right." Etienne closed his hand around the ring. He didn't pocket it. He didn't throw it away. He simply held it for a moment, then set it down. "Goodbye, Vivian." "Goodbye, Etienne." She turned and walked away. Didn't look back. He didn't need her to. They each kept a piece of silence from the other, like the blank space between two chapters now closed. A week later, Etienne opened the rear door of the estate, where Magda was watering the plants. She looked up. "Skipping work again?" Etienne smiled, stepped down the stone steps, holding a rolled-up sheet. "No, I came to ask you to approve a new design." "Design?" He handed her a drawing. A plan to expand the staff reading room, with an attached communal tea room, bright, open, warm. No longer just a service wing, but a true part of the home. Magda studied it carefully. She was quiet for a long time, then softly said, "This is the first time I've seen you plan a change, without destroying something." Etienne raised his head, gaze steady. "I learned that from someone who never left me, even though she had every right to." Magda chuckled gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then this time we'll change it together, but we'll do it right." The Laurent estate still stood, with its weathered tiles, its rusted iron gates, and the invisible cracks carved by time. But inside, a new heart had begun to beat, not because of the refurbished interiors, but because the people inside had learned how to love the right way. Some things can never return to how they once were. But some things, if cared for, can become even more beautiful than they were at the beginning.